This module is going to focus on competitive intelligence analysis. So for any of you guys that are in competitive intel, I'm sure you could teach this module. I'm going to focus or take a stab at it from the web analytics side. A lot of this has to do with, and you will utilize third-party vendors to put this information together. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time giving you a list of vendors' names. A lot of them cost money, and so therefore, as not rich college students, you probably won't be able to subscribe to many of these, but at the very end of this, I'm going to give you a list of the top 10 free competitive intelligence tools for the web and web performance that you can use. Some of them will be a 30-day trial subscription that you can use, and at least it will give you an option or an ability to go in and do your report for this week, but it will also give you some ideas of kinds of information that you can gather. But the whole point of this module is to show what kinds of competitive intelligence you might want to look for when you are looking at you or your business and another competitor. Okay, so let's get started. The first is the opportunity, right? So what's out there? And so you're looking right now at something from compete.com, which is one of the competitive intelligence tools. And you'll notice that it costs $249 a month. So probably not affordable for you. And I wouldn't say, unless you have been hired by a company, that that would be something that you would want to do at this moment. But why should we even compare about competitive intelligence in the first place? Well, because it gives us an indexing against, number one, where we are in relation to our competitors, but it also gives us the opportunity to make changes to better compete with them. So don't look at this as a point where you're going to say, oh my gosh, we're doing horribly compared to, XYZ company. Instead, look at it from a point of what can we do to better compete. No pun intended, better compete with whoever we are competing with. So look at Stanford. You could look, and just throwing them out as an example, since they're an education institution, we might want to look between Stanford and Berkeley. And so you work for Berkeley and the goal is to take Stanford down. And so you want to see how popular Stanford is, what pages on their websites are popular, who their demographics are, etc. And so I want to know, how are they getting their traffic? Where's the traffic going to after they leave? How many visitors do they have compared to ours? How many visits per person? And you can go over here, what subdomains they have, what search referrals they're getting, traffic, their general traffic dashboard, incoming traffic, outgoing traffic, which is this over here. But like I said, here's their demographics, how many males, females, what income ratio, and again, age breakdown. So you can take a look at all of this information. You can get all this information out there through competitive intelligence. And there's lots of other data that we're going to take a look at as we go through here. So again, we can look at this and make decisions. It helps us fill out our marketing plan. Basically, if I can't emphasize anything else in this module, one of the things I want to tell you is that the ability to analyze your competitors' performance on the web is key to your success. Not just the business's success, but your success. Because you can present lots of information, and you will look at the dashboards module and you'll see how you can present this beautiful information, these great action items, but if they're not in context with your competition, if they're not in context with, why are we doing this? Well, the one reason is because we're lagging behind Stanford and Stanford's getting all of our applications. Then it's really hard for people to know why they should be taking action on your recommendations. And so your ability to analyze your competitors' performance is really, really, really key to your success. So let's take a look at 9 different elements or ways, I guess, of how people collect data. And why do we care about this? Why do we care about the 9 ways data is collected for competitive intelligence? Well, because some of it's crap. And if you don't know where your data is coming from and what the benefits or the positives and negatives are, then you're not able to decide if how much weight you should put in the data. Okay? And so not only, you know, and I showed you compete.com, not only should you choose a vendor, but before you choose the vendor, you want to decide or you want to know where they're getting their information from. How big is their population? How valid is the population to what you're doing in your population, your general population? Okay, all these things are going to make a difference. So, and this hopefully will make more sense as we go through some of these examples. So the first one, the first way people or the companies are collecting data is through something called toolbar data. Now you guys are too young probably to realize this or remember this, but it used to be toolbars were all the rage. You could download toolbars from Yahoo, Ask, Bing, Google, like all these different companies would have these toolbars, and they were extensions. They would go right to the top where your search term is, or you know, you would type in the URL, and they would fit above that, and you could search for things using these toolbars. And basically the companies thought that these would be free ways or easier ways for people to search. And so, you know, above your URL, where you type in your URL, there would be, you know, it's a Yahoo, and then it would say search, and it would be permanently affixed to your browser. Well, now, as you know, you can go to the URL bar, and you can just type in a word and it will search for you, so you don't need to have other toolbars. And so the reason that I tell you that whole long backstory is because there's not a lot of people with toolbars attached to their browsers anymore. And so if they're using toolbar data, your population sample is going to be very small and probably old because these are people who don't keep up with technology. They're not keeping up with changes. The other thing that, the other way, or what the transition was, and even that is transitioning out, is then they said, okay, well, you know, we want people to install these extensions. And so now you can, you know, install the Google search or Chrome extension. And even those are starting to phase away. And so if their only use of data, their only data source is toolbars and extensions, you really want to be suspicious. Not saying that it's a bad tool to use, it's just that you don't want to put all of your weight in it, because their population is going to be antiquated, not tech savvy, and probably pretty small. The second way that these tools collect data is through something called panel data. And the way panel data works is just what you would think. It's a panel. So they go out and they say to people, hey, how about this? How about you give us all of your information, including your credit card numbers, including every website you go on, all your browsing history, how long you were on, everything. Nothing will be blocked. And in payment for that, we are going to give you a chance to win a prize, so a raffle. And yeah, there's a lot of people that do that, but so Nielsen's is one of them, one of the companies that does this. And they have, if you read on their website, Nielsen's has about 200,000 people across 30,000 sites. The problem with that is, if there's billions of people and billions of websites accessed every day, and there's only 200,000 from Nielsen and only 30,000 sites. Think about how many sites are on the internet. This is very limited data. And yeah, there's some statistical significance issues, obviously, but you want to know, and you want to think about this in this term too. Nielsen's would be blocked from corporations, universities, pretty much any place of work. They don't like these kind of, we'll call them phishing. They're not phishing, but this kind of panel access. They don't like that. And so it's completely banned at work. And so the only place that these people are accessing this is at home. And where, let's be honest, where do most people do their internet browsing? Work. And if you're at the university, all those students are also eliminated if you're on the IP address of the ISP of the school. And so you have a sample bias. Your sample is going to be people who do their primary browsing from home. You're not going to capture anything that's going on in the workplace. The other thing is you have a sampling bias, because what type of people would give their credit card information and everything that they do online to Nielsen's? And so you just want to be aware when they're using panel data as their exclusive data set, that you're going to have a sample and sampling bias plus a small population. The third thing or fourth thing that you want to think about is something we call the Web 2.0 challenge. Tools like Nielsen's do not measure Ajax and video and other kinds of experiences that you might have on your website, which means that people might be on your site, but they're not being tracked through Nielsen's. and where they're going on your site through Nielsen's. So kind of keep that in mind, because if you're in the high-tech industry and you're doing competitive intelligence and you know that your competitors have a lot of Ajax and video and Java, they're not getting tracked, and you're not getting tracked if you have the same thing. So the data might not be the best through something like panel data. So what we do in order to contrast this is we might use, and you'll see some examples here, and as you look through the 10 tools, the free tools that I'm going to give you at the end, I hope you do your research and look at where their data is coming from. But as you do that, you might see that some of these vendors use panel data. I don't think any of them use panel data exclusively that I'm going to give you, but what you might want to do is augment it with other sources. Okay, and so a panel is okay for sites with more than 1 million visitors because it's really not that big of a deal. Most of us probably have less than that. So probably not the best option for us for an exclusive data source. So the third way, probably the best way, is something called ISP data. And this basically says everybody pulls this information. So if you go to Mercyhurst's tech department, IT department, and ask them to pull the ISP report, they can. They can go through and they can look. Basically, it says this: computer X, so it doesn't have your name, it just has your computer address. It says computer X on this network requested Y and then requested Z, requested CNN, and then requested the article on the Trump-Clinton debate on Sunday. Okay, and so it gives you this information, but it gives it to you in a kind of vague way. So, then you can go, an example of a resource that uses this is something called Experian, and they have a product called Hitwise, and they use ISP data. So what happens is Mercyhurst, and I'm not saying they do this, I'm just saying somebody like Mercyhurst, then gets all this ISP data, and then they sell it to another vendor, and this vendor, so they'd sell it to Experian, and then Experian uses and aggregates this data into these kinds of reports that you can then search. Now the sampling bias is eliminated because you didn't give permission. You might have given permission somewhere along the line where you told the company, so for example Mercyhurst, yeah, you can use my data. But not quite in this way. You just might say, you might have actually had to sign a privacy notice or click the privacy notice that says this. So it would be interesting, as you get privacy notices. I just got one, I just downloaded Google Drive again on my phone, and I got a privacy notice. And if you're anything like me, we just hit okay, sounds great, and we move on. It would be interesting to go on and look to see if it says something about how they're going to use your data. I heard somebody say once that if you're not paying for it, what you're giving them, if you're not giving them money, what you're giving them is your data or your information. So if you're downloading free things, chances are some form of your data is being given to them and potentially resold. These are the largest samples. You can imagine all the data from Mercyhurst, for example. Huge sample. Now multiply that times every university, 3,500 universities across the United States, times thousands and thousands and thousands of students. We have a large data set, right? But there are some gaps because usually these data sets come from particular industries, and there's holes in these industries. So, healthcare might not release any of their ISP data, and retail might release it all. Okay? So the number four way to do this is something called search engine data. This uses your IP address, the browser, etc. You go into Google, you search in Google, Google takes your information. And how do I know this? Because when you go to Google, even if you're not signed in, and you go back to your search history through Chrome, through their browser, it keeps your search history. Google's keeping your information. They're keeping your search history. Now, it's not necessarily, they're keeping your IP address as well. It's not necessarily super specific, but it's pretty specific. And so what you can do, the good news about this, right, cost benefit here, is that now you can go into something called Google Trends, and you can look at trends. And so down here you can see I went to Google Trends, which is just google.com/trends, type in car insurance, looking at it, I think this is over 2004 to present, and it's showing the ups and downs of car insurance, right? And I'm looking at you know, web and mobile, industry, like just the industry category. I'm looking at the whole world. It also gives me related terms. So here are the terms, not just car insurance. What other terms are people searching for? These terms are awesome. They're like little golden nuggets because you can look at what people, especially if I type in here like Mercyhurst University, which we'll do in a minute. Mercyhurst University, it shows me what other terms people are typing in. They're also typing in Mercyhurst University. They're also typing in Clarion University, Gannon University, Seton Hill University. All of that comes up here. You can also look at the top trending terms. You can look at the rising trending terms. What terms are people searching for right now that are increasing compared to my aggregation over a long period of time? This is probably, and I said that this was the best. This is the best because it's such a large data set. This is the best because it's probably your best primary source for things like SEO. It does not, though, not every search engine does this. Okay, not every search engine does this. But both Google Trends and Google AdWords are fed by search engine data. So it's just, again, to simplify it, it's capturing what people are searching for when they go to search in Google. So you type in terms, they're capturing that data. This person typed this in, this is where they live, they're pulling your geography, and this is how many people over time are actually searching for it. The fifth way to do this, that people or vendors collect data, is through web analytics vendors. Google Analytics collects your data, right? And it's cloud-based, and we'll put that in parentheses. So these cloud-based vendors, they're gathering information and they're centralizing the data storage. So then what Google does is Google takes all of their different clients, so everybody who's participating in Google Analytics, they take the information and they categorize it and they aggregate it, and again, they give it back to you in things like Google Trends, Google AdWords. You can go to, because of this, you can go to places like Google Analytics, you can go to their blog and search for benchmarks. And so they will have benchmarks of different industries. So they'll say, here are the indexes, here's the conversion rates in the index or the industry of hospitality. And so you can go look at the hospitality conversion rate. The average conversion rate of a website in the hospitality industry is X. And they have a lot of different indexes that you can compare yourself to. So if you don't know, these are good resources to be able to say, how are we doing? What's our current conversion rate? It's only 2%. Oh my gosh, we suck. 2% is horrible. You go find out that your industry average is 1. Suddenly you get promoted. In this kind of data, you have a sample bias, right? So one of the things, your potential sample bias, you want to ask them how many clients do they actually have? And what categories do they predominantly have? So you go to them, and actually one of the largest vendors in the industry only has about 3,000 clients, and they're predominantly in 2 particular industries. And if you're not in those 2 industries, this data is going to not help you because you have this huge sample bias. And so you want to ask these questions of the vendors before you spend money with them. And even if you're getting it for free, you want to know this up front. Because when things don't go well for you, you might want to look at that. Well, you want to look at it before, but you might want to look at that and say, guys, listen, to my executive team, I know that this competitive intelligence data is out there. I know that this is coming from a source. It's the best that we have right now. But I also need to tell you that they only have 50 clients in this particular category. And, you know, we know from the internet research, from general research, that there's really closer to 3,500 clients in this particular space. Okay, I hope that makes sense to you. Now, the good thing is that the data comes directly from the clients. You actually download, just like you do with Google Analytics, you download a piece of script on your website, and so it's real data coming from real clients. There's no middleman, there's no bias, it's direct. Okay, and again, this is anonymous aggregated data. So the bad thing is you can't do any direct comparisons with this. Number 6, self-reported data. So again, why, first of all, my question is, with self-reported data, why on earth would people provide their information? Why would they choose to just give these companies their information? Well, because Quantcast, right? If you go, and you can go on to quantcast.com, you can try it out. I think I give you a link to it later in this presentation. But you can go to quantcast.com and you can look at tryurbandictionary.com. It doesn't have, you can't try mercyhurst.edu, it won't show up, but major vendors, and I think they prompt you with try this or try that. But if you try urbandictionary.com, well, if you go there, the reason that they want you to know what their results are is because they sell advertising. And so if I'm the advertising manager, I'm going to say to you, hey, Bob, go on to Quantcast. They have all of our data. You can see how what our traffic is. You can see our demographics. And so you can determine if this is a good place for you to advertise. So it's a good, again, they're giving and getting. So this is a good source for them. And again, because they can do that, because they can sell that benefit, we now have this aggregation of data from these sites. Are they completely accurate? No, but they're better than what we have. If we don't, the alternative is nothing, right? We have nothing about our competitors. So it can help. But again, you're not going to find Gannon University on there as a competitor. This is the cleanest source of data because, again, it's coming directly from the websites. The seventh way to get information is something called scraping and indexing. This is where the tools go in and they basically sweep through the sites and pull the information from what's available. An example is Moz.com. You can go on and look at this, but you want to sweat the details. You want to look at how big the index is, how frequently it's refreshed, what are the geographic limitations. You want to see what their limitations are before you decide if it fits your population. The geographic limitations, they might not have anything from Europe. And your primary market, your secondary market is in Europe, and so you might not want to use the scraping and indexing. And again, you might want to see if other sources are included. And so scraping and indexing goes through and they basically pull from all these other different sites, right? They pull from all these other different vendors, these bots, if you will. And so sometimes this can be good if they're augmenting with other sources. And so again, just make sure that you're sweating the details with this one. The next one is hybrid data. This is what we call the whole kitchen sink, right? We're going to throw it up. We're going to just put everything in the kitchen sink, mix it around, and out comes the data. This is actually the best data you probably can find because they use everything. They use all of the different panels. They use scraping. They use ISP. They use everything. And again, this is the most common data you're going to find in some of our tools that I give you at the end definitely do use hybrid data. How do you know, or how do you know that this is happening? Again, go look at their methodology or the data collection. It'll tell you. It'll say we use a combination of X, Y, and Z. This is going to continue to grow. So you're going to see this more and more and more. One of the questions, though, that you want to ask your vendor is how hybrid is your hybrid source? You want the breakdowns, right? Because if they're predominantly using scraping and indexing, or if they're predominantly using panels, then you might rethink it, that this is not the best tool for you. But if they're predominantly using ISPs with support from panels and indexing and some other things, then okay, I might buy that. There's also something called special case external voice of the customer data. Now this is really where we get the qualitative information and not the quantitative. So iPerceptions, for example, publishes reports with satisfaction and task completion. These give you benchmarks that you can work against. This isn't, you're not going to be able to, StatMetrics is another one. You're not necessarily going to be able to go in and search for a particular competitor, but it will give you information from an industry. So higher education, here's their indexing reports. Again, it's JavaScript tag used for surveys. And then they collect that qualitative analysis and they say, okay, overall, X amount of companies in this industry are satisfied. X amount of companies, were able to complete the task. Or X amount of visitors were able to complete the task. Here's the index number. Then you take your index number and are able to compare it against it. So the next piece of this video